One of the thing that I guess I'm most devoted to in the Courage to Teach movement is to create a form of community in which there are several basic ground rules. And the way I often sum them up is, in this community there will be no fixing, there will be no saving, there will be no advising, there will be no setting straight. Now, if you eliminate those four things, most of us haven't got the foggiest idea what to do with one another, because we feel somehow we're in the business of fixing, advising, saving, and setting straight. But when you create a community in which those behaviors are outlawed, you create enormous liberation for people to really explore what their truth is. This doesn't mean benign neglect. It doesn't mean that I sit while you're talking or saying your truth and stare out the window. I'm engaged with you. I listen to you. I try to receive what you're saying. And I may want to ask you an honest, open question about it. What leads you to say what you just said? Or where does that come from in your life? Or what implications do you think what you've just said has for your life? It's very important to work, as we do in this Courage to Teach movement, on how to ask honest, open questions, because we are trained, in fact, to ask questions that are speeches in disguise or advices and fixes in disguise. So if you say something that about an issue you're struggling with, and I look at you and say, have you thought about seeing a therapist? That's not an honest, open question. I'm sitting here thinking, she ought to see a therapist. And and what I do with a question like that is to try to fix you or save you under the cover of asking a question. Questions like that, have you thought about seeing a therapist? Or can't you see it's your mother? Or here's a book you ought to read. Why haven't you read it yet? Those questions have great power to shut down the soul, to shut down the voice of the inner teacher. Honest, open questions invite that inner voice into fuller expression. By an honest question, I mean one that I'm not sitting here when I ask it thinking, I know the right answer to this and I sure hope that he or she gives it to me. And by an open question, I mean one that doesn't back you into a corner where I'm proposing either the fix or the direction of a fix, and you have to kind of fight against me if you want to hold your own turf. It's an enormous art, but it is for me related to my understanding of the human soul. I have a very vivid, for me, image of what the human soul is like. I think the human soul is exactly like a wild animal. We know that wild animals are very resourceful, they're very resilient, they're very savvy, they know how to survive in tough places. And all of that is true of the human soul. If it weren't true, there's a whole bunch of people in any room who wouldn't be here today if they hadn't had that resourcefulness to fall back on. But also, like a wild animal, the human soul is essentially shy. We know that if we want to see a wild animal, the last thing in the world we should do is to go crashing into the woods, screaming and yelling for the thing to come out. We can do that for the next 50 years and never see the thing we seek. We also know that if we will walk into the woods quietly, sit at the base of a tree, breathe with the earth for an hour or two, it may well be that the thing we seek is going to put in an appearance. That wild animal will make itself known because the space feels safe. And we will at least catch a glimpse out of the corner of our eye, and all our lives we will never forget that glimpse. The Courage to Teach groups, the form of community that we are working for there, is exactly like walking into the woods, sitting quietly at the base of the tree with each other, and waiting for that precious moment when the soul puts in an appearance, and when it does, treating it with utter and unconditional respect and letting it find its own voice.